The judge's gavel hit the wood with a crack so loud it echoed in my chest, and across the courtroom I watched the HOA president's face go pale as she realized the deed she thought she owned had just slipped right through her fingers. For a moment, nobody spoke. 96 houses sat finished and occupied behind us, and every single one of them was standing on land the court had just confirmed still belonged to me. Before I tell you how it got that far, I want to know what you think. Have you ever seen an HOA push someone so hard they ended up destroying themselves? Let me know in the comments, because what I went through still doesn't feel real when I say it out loud. Before all of this, my life was quiet in a way people don't appreciate until it's gone. I owned a stretch of land on the edge of town, just under 40 acres that had been in my family for generations. It wasn't fancy. It was open fields, a line of old oak trees, and a small house I lived in with my wife. On summer mornings I'd drink coffee on the porch and watch fog lift off the grass. On weekends, neighbors would wave as they drove by, and sometimes kids from down the road would fish in the creek that cut across the back of the property. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable, and more importantly, I was at peace. That peace started to crack the day the survey trucks showed up. At first I thought they were lost. Bright vests, orange flags, long metal poles stabbing into the dirt along my fence line. I walked out and asked if I could help them. One of the guys barely looked up and said, "We're marking the subdivision lots." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, and told him he must be on the wrong property. That's when I heard her voice. Sharp, confident, and already irritated. "No, they're exactly where they're supposed to be." I turned and saw her standing near a black SUV, arms crossed, sunglasses perched like armor. She looked like the kind of woman who never waited in line because she believed rules bent around her. Perfect hair, clipboard tucked under her arm, and that smile that wasn't friendly so much as practiced. She introduced herself as the HOA president for a new development called Willowcrest. She said it like I should already know it. According to her, the land behind my house had been purchased years ago and was approved for residential development. 96 homes. Phase 1 was already funded. Phase 2 was about to break ground. I remember feeling confused more than angry. I told her she was mistaken. That land was mine. Always had been. I had the deed, the tax records, everything. She didn't even blink. "Well," she said, flipping a page on her clipboard, "our attorneys disagree." The first conflict came quietly, almost politely. I called my county office, expecting a simple fix. Some clerical error, some outdated map. Instead, I was told that a developer had filed paperwork claiming ownership through a complex transfer tied to an old easement from decades ago. It was flimsy, but it was enough for permits to get approved before anyone double-checked the boundaries. I brought this up to the HOA. I emailed, I called. I even showed up to one of their early meetings, standing in the back while they talked about playground equipment and mailbox styles like my land wasn't the foundation of their whole plan. When I spoke up, she cut me off. "You had your chance to object," she said loudly, in front of everyone. "Construction has already begun." That's when the fines started. I got letters saying I was violating HOA rules I never agreed to because my fence wasn't approved, because my driveway was unsightly, because my trash cans were visible from the road. I laughed at first. Then the letters started, including dollar amounts, late fees, legal warnings. Meanwhile, bulldozers rolled in. Every morning I woke up to the sound of engines tearing into the field where my grandfather used to plant corn. Trees came down, dirt piled up, concrete poured, and every time I tried to stop it, the HOA president would smile that same tight smile and say, "Take it up with the courts." The escalation was relentless. Survey stakes started appearing deeper into my property. Workers parked trucks on my driveway. One afternoon I came home to find part of my fence removed to allow access. When I confronted the foreman, he shrugged and said he was just following orders. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of construction lights. My wife would ask me what we were going to do, and I didn't have an answer. Every option felt expansive, slow, and stacked against us. Then came the accusation. I got served papers claiming I was trespassing on HOA land, that I was interfering with lawful development. They wanted an injunction to keep me off their property. I remember standing in my kitchen, papers shaking in my hands, feeling like the ground had dropped out from under me. That's when I stopped reacting and started paying attention. I went back through every document I could find. Old deeds, survey maps, county filings, and that's when I noticed something small but strange. The HOA's claim relied on an easement that allowed access, not ownership, across a corner of my land. Somewhere along the line, someone had stretched that easement into a full transfer. It was wrong, and more importantly, it was sloppy. I hired a land use attorney, the kind who speaks quietly and listens more than he talks. He didn't promise miracles, he just said, "Let them build." I stared at him like he was insane. He explained it slowly. If we tried to stop construction now, it would drag on for years. But if they finished TIF, they sold homes, collected dues, and operated under a false assumption of ownership, the liability would multiply. The mistake would become undeniable. So I waited. For 2 years, I watched houses rise on my land, families moved in, kids rode bikes on streets that used to be pasture. Every time I drove past the development, it felt like a punch to the gut. The HOA president would wave at me like we were old friends. "You should have settled," she told me once, smiling. "This could have been easier." The payoff came in court. By the time we filed, the evidence was overwhelming. The original deed, the misfiled transfer, the easement language. The judge listened carefully as my attorney laid it all out. The HOA's lawyers argued development rights, good faith, and community reliance. Then the judge asked one question: where's the deed transferring ownership from this man to the HOA? There wasn't one. The silence that followed was thick. The judge ruled that the land had never legally changed hands. The HOA had built 96 homes on property they did not own. When the gavel fell, I felt something release inside me. Not triumph, not joy, just relief. Aftermath was chaos. Lawsuits between the HOA and the developer. Emergency meetings. Homeowners demanding answers. I didn't gloat. I didn't threaten. I worked out agreements that protected the families living there while restoring my rights. The HOA president resigned within a week. I heard she moved out of state. Now, in the evenings, I sit on my porch again. The view is different. Houses line the horizon. But the land beneath them is mine, and so is the peace I fought for. Funny thing is, she once told me I'd regret this. Turns out, the only thing I regret is not realizing sooner that sometimes the quietest move is letting your opponent finish making their mistake.